Hey everybody, this is Evan Abrams for PremiumBeat.com, and in this After Effects tutorial, we're going to be creating a sliding dynamic transition that makes use of a lot of bright colors, moving rectangles, and is kind of a lot of fun. So hopefully you enjoy it. We're going to use it to transition out of this piece into something else, and then we'll go into the tutorial. So thanks for watching, and enjoy this tutorial brought to you by Evan Abrams and PremiumBeat.com. Inside of After Effects, the first thing you want to do is import your footage. We require some audio to edit to, a nice picture for the background, and both of those have been brought in. And we should also bring in any logo assets that you're going to be working with. So you want these in a vector EPS or Adobe Illustrator project file. I've taken the EPS and I've put it into a nicely layered Illustrator project file. So I can import that and just say open, and it's going to ask me how I would like to bring that Adobe Illustrator file in. Do I want it as footage where I can choose a layer or merge all the layers together? But you can also do it as a composition where it stays in multiple layers, and then you can have the footage dimensions be based on the layer size. So I'm going to do that. You hit OK, and that will bring in all of these assets as layers, and all of those layers put together in a composition. Move that into my assets folder, and we are ready to begin animating things along to an audio track. Our next step is to take our audio and drag it onto the Make New Composition button. That'll create a composition that's the same size, duration, and properties of whatever you drag onto that. It'll also have the same name. So I'm going to rename this as the tutorial example, and most of our work will be done in this composition, except when we pre-compose some things and bring in other compositions. So here in this piece, we have our audio, and I'm going to hit LL to bring up the audio waveform of that piece, and I'm going to trim this down a little bit. I'm going to trim it right around here, because I only need the audio from here on out. So I'm just going to drag the end like this and snap it to there. And I'm going to hit B to start my timeline there. And I'm just going to pull this off a little bit before I say trim comp to work area, because I want to have a little bit of play on either side so that I can have some handles or, whatever, just so I have more space to play with when I finally take this and I put it over top of other footage. Now, since I'm putting this over top of other footage, I want to pay close attention to if my composition settings are correct. So you want to have the same size frame and the same frame rate as any other footage you're going to be interacting with. So that's important for setting up your project. Now, the other thing we want to do is work with audio, and After Effects is notably bad at working with audio. You can, of course, preview audio by hitting the period button, and then after a process of caching the audio, it's going to play it back for us. And so you can hear it, or you can RAM preview it, but working with audio is difficult. So what is best to do is to listen to the audio and hit the asterisk button while selecting the audio layer. This will allow you to pick out points and set markers. So I'm going to listen. And as you can see, as I've been hitting the asterisks, it's been creating markers along this line. Now you can take those markers and you can move them to be more exact to where you wanted them. I want to make sure that I am indicating where there are interesting hits in the sound so that when I go over them again, I'm able to sync up things to happen at these points. So this is probably your best bet if you're thinking about working with audio, is to start with the audio track and then tap your marker button to add little markers along. Also, just observing the waveform can help you visually line things up so you don't have to rely on listening to them all the time. So now we're ready to actually animate, since we have a composition set up and we have our audio marked out. So the first thing we want to do is put on some transition pieces. So we want those angled lines that come out of nowhere, move around the screen, and mix it up and confuse the bringing on of the background layer. So what we're going to do is we are going to create some solids, and we do that by double-clicking on the rectangle tool, and it'll create a solid. It'll have a fill, it'll have a rectangle, and overall it has a lot of things we like. So we're going to start by rotating 30 degrees so that this is on an angle. And we are going to twirl down into here, go into the contents, go into the rectangle path, and then we are going to unlink those properties, and we're going to make it way taller and way narrower. We're going to bring it down to 0. And that's where we want to start. So we want to start with the size at 0, and we would like it to end at a larger size, maybe something like 500. That could be a nice size to end at. And we want to alter the layer's position because we want it to be going left and right. So we'd like it to end off frame over here, and we'd like it to begin probably closer to this side of the frame. And then somewhere in the middle, I would like it to be out here. I'd like it to move one way and then move back the other way. So that's what I would like to have happen. So now I'm going to select these keyframes, and I'm going to hit F9, and that's going to easy ease them. I'm going to easy ease its size as well. And then I'm going to look in the graph editor at what that looks like visually. So I'm looking at a speed graph here. If your graph doesn't look like my graph, make sure you're looking at a speed graph. And I'm going to take the handles of the middle part and push them out like so. So this handle goes this way, this handle goes that way. So we end up with something like that. Okay. And then for the size, I'd like the size to also have a similar type of bend to it. I want it to be going like that. So it comes on and away it goes. So what I now need to do is go into the position here and just alter the interpolation of that. So I want to go to the keyframe interpolation and change it to a linear spatial interpolation, which will get rid of sort of that float that happens on the outside. So you can see it comes out, gets bigger, and then is pulled away. And so that's kind of what we're after. Now you can take this and you can hold down Alt and accelerate it or decelerate it as you like. So it's coming on, and we'd like it to slow down here at this next beat. So cool. So that is one thing coming and going, and I think we've done a very good job of that. Now we need to duplicate it. So just go Control D, Command D, that'll duplicate it, create a new one. I'm going to hit U to bring up its properties, and I would like this one to exit on the other side. I want it to go the other way, and I'd like it to end a little bit narrower, so it's not as big, and we need to change its middle frames here. So let's take its position, and let's move it this way. Let's grab its starting position and move it over in the opposite direction. So these are coming on in different directions. Cool. And you might want to, space these out maybe a little bit more. It really depends on your personal style. So just do what you feel is right. And now duplicate it again to make another one. And I think maybe this time we should be at maybe 350 for a final size. Maybe this one should end, instead of ending on this side, should end over here. And then maybe it should start closer to the middle, and then it should drift further. And we'll just see how that goes. So it comes on, and a whole bunch of things coming and going and confusing the heck out of the entire thing that we're looking at. Good. So we've created these three, and let's give their layers a pink color. Let's put it down here to fuchsia. That way we can keep track of them, because we're going to change their color up there. We're going to change their color up to a nice brilliant fuchsia color right there. Cool. So that comes on, and then they all get confused, and then they go away. Perfect. Now let's create some more highlight sized things. So let's duplicate one of these layers, and let's make it much smaller. So let's make it down to like 200 size. That's as big as it gets. And I guess it can exit on this side of the frame too. We're going to need to change its color to be a brighter blue, less saturation, quite a bit brighter. Awesome, that's good. Let's change its layer color to be blue, so we're not confused by any of this. And now let's try to position it somewhere a little bit interesting, maybe along the edge of one of these things, and we'll move its starting position a little bit. So we also want to take it and have it come on once everybody else is kind of at rest. So we're going to select all of its keyframes, hold down Alt, and then adjust this to start at a different time. So these are coming on, and then this is coming on, and then we're all going away together, all right? So we can hide it behind some of these other layers to kind of make it a little bit more mysterious. Neat, so that's happening. Kind of comes out of nowhere. Maybe put it behind everything. Good, okay, so that's working out for me. Maybe you want to adjust your layer order. Cool, now let's duplicate it, put it above everything, and then let's alter this one a little bit by having it go on the other side, and its middle, time in the middle. Yeah, let's see how this looks. You're gonna need to play around with this stuff to make something worth looking at, but I'm sure by the end of it, you'll have something to write home about. Good. So, just play around with it, change the size, change the space, and move things around as you need. And remember to adjust the timing, select the keyframes, hold down Alt, and you can stretch them out like so. Good. So we've got this massive confusion that comes on and then dissipates. So we should have something that's going to bring on our background layer. So let's grab our background layer, this free wood texture, and bring it down here. So once everything is nice and complicated, then we want this to be coming on. And we're going to do that by creating another solid. This is another rectangle solid, and we're going to go into this rectangle. We could give it a different fill color. It doesn't really matter. We could change its layer color to yellow so we can tell it apart from all the other ones. And what we're going to do is we're going to shift it along so it starts later in time. So it's going to start basically when all of this stuff is getting crazy. And what it's going to do is its rectangle is going to change from a size of 0, and it's going to change up to be much wider. And we're also going to alter its transformation so that its skew is at 30 degrees, so it's kind of on the same angle. So it needs to be wide enough to take up the entire frame. Perfect. And then we're going to easy ease these keyframes, and we're going to pinch them. So the first keyframe gets pinched like that, so it comes in at maximum velocity. Good, perfect. So now we can take this layer and we can put it down here, and we can take the background layer and we can say, make sure you use an alpha matte of that layer. So that means that this layer will only show up where this other layer is at. So things come on, they get confusing, and then this thing expands basically underneath them. Perfect. So one thing you might want to take care of is making sure that this layer lines up here with this layer, just so there's no graphical tears or confusion. And you might want to move it along a little bit. It really depends on the music you're working with. We happen to be working with a combination of loops from the Beach Rabbit sounds that come from premiumbeat.com. So if you like this track, head over to Premium Beat and get it. It's called Beach Rabbit. If you want to use your own music, if you want to use something a client's provided to you, then it's not going to be exactly the same. So anyway, that's just some tips about that. So we've got this thing coming on. We need to duplicate it and put it at the end also to make everything go away. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all of these layers, Control-Shift-C to create a pre-comp out of them. I'm going to call this transition piece. I'm going to move all the attributes into this new composition. You say OK. And I'm just going to clip this off right here. And so it comes on. Now I'm going to duplicate that. And later I'm going to bring it in again over here so that it is coming on at the end. And I'm going to duplicate this transitional piece here as well. And I'm going to make sure its eyeball is back on. I'm going to change its fill color to something darker, something bluer, like this maybe, and then bring it into the end as well so that it is going to come on roughly during the same timing that we did at the beginning when things are getting nice and confused, so that it comes on so that it's hidden behind this madness that's going on like so. All right, so maybe around here. Here we go, things are dispersing. Now is the time to come on. So basically we're using this transitional piece to hide bringing on this, because otherwise it might be kind of banal. So it's kind of spicing it up a little bit. Good. So that is the transitional piece that you see at the beginning and end. And you can play with it and change the bars around and do all sorts of neat things to really make it your own. So the next thing to do is to animate that logo stuff. So let's go ahead, get in here, and we'll make use of that composition that was created when we imported logo assets. So whenever you import things, you want to make use of the already created composition of some stuff. So if I toggle on the transparency grid, you can see we've got some layers from Adobe Illustrator that have been brought in here, and I'm going to right click on them and I'm going to create some shapes from those vector layers, which means I'm going to convert all of the external things into vector graphic information that lives only inside of After Effects. This can be useful if you want to internalize all of the things, if you want to animate all of the paths, which we do, and if you want to get more fancy with your vector assets. It's easy to draw them in Illustrator. It's way easier to animate them in After Effects for obvious reasons. So we're working with the fabulous Premium Beat logo, and we are going to be animating these bars, animating these letters, animating these words. So let's get into it. The first thing I want to do is deal with these bars. So I'm going to delete these layers that are of no further use to me. And in fact, I can delete those layer assets from here without harming anything. This is not going to change, so I'm fine to delete them. So what I'm going to do is first select these bars, and I'm going to grab my rectangle tool. I'm going to switch into mask mode. I'm going to draw a mask around here, and then we are going to animate these. So I've drawn a mask, wonderful, and that's going to define the visual area of the layer. And then I'm going to go into these groups. I'm going to twirl down to the transform. I'm going to move ahead 20 frames. I'm going to keyframe the position, and I'm also going to look into their paths, and I'm going to want to keyframe all of the paths as well. So we already know this is the desired end state. We want to get to this state here. So we're going to set keyframes for everything we want to be as it is at the end. Now I'm going to hit U, so I'm just looking at the keyframes I've set. I'm going to go back to the beginning, and I'm going to move these so they are below the mask. All right, so let's do 690 like so, and these need to come down also. Trying to bring them all down so they're all kind of even, and I think that's wonderful. Good. Now let's go in here and let's alter these paths. All right, so now I can select all of the paths, and I can hold down Shift and move them up. Select just these ones, hold down Shift and move them up. So they're all like this. So when that animates on, they grow up into place like that. Great. Now I'm going to select all the keyframes, hit F9, easy ease them. I'm going to go into the graph editor and I'm going to alter these handles so that they start at the maximum velocity and they end just trailing off. So just like that. Excellent. Now I would also like to look at these paths and I would like to shift them along. So this one's the last one, so I want it to come on last. And then like the next one to come on, you know, a little bit delayed from it, maybe like this. And then the next one, a little bit off from it, like so. Maybe this will work. Let's have a look. So there is one keyframe between the first two, two between the next, and three between the last. So there's kind of a staggered start to this coming on. Perfect. Now I'm going to take it, change its fill for everything to be a nice bright white. Perfect. Wonderful. And that's all done. So that's coming on. The next thing I want to do is deal with these letters. I'm going to do the same thing for both the beat and the premium part. And to a lesser extent, it will be the exact same process that I use for the royalty-free music and sound effects part. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select the layer here. I'm going to go in, look at the contents, go into them groups, and go into the transform of those groups, just like we've done. Go ahead 20 frames or so, put a keyframe for the position. I'm going to hit U, so I'm only looking at the keyframes. And then I'm going to drag them all down, okay? So how far you need to drag them should be determined by a mask, right? You take that mask like this, you draw it on, you put it just below the bottom here. Good. Okay, so these need to become even lower, like here. Perfect. That looks totally good. So now we do the exact same thing. We want all of these to have the same character of motion. So I'm going to easy ease them, and then I'm going to adjust their handles in here, grabbing and adjusting, grabbing and adjusting. Perfect. So that comes up. I want to stagger these as well. So this is the B, so it's going to start. What letter is this? Ooh, that's the T, so it's going to be at the end. And then we also have the A, so it's going to be next to the T. So say 1, 2, 3. Okay. This next one is going to be 1, 2. That's good too. And then like so. Good. Now I can just move this layer a little bit like here. So this comes on. The word premium is going to come on. And then beat will come on while those are still going on. Good. So we've got those two sorted out. We're going to use the same process on the word premium, and then a similar process on this whole block over here. Since there's a lot of words there, they're not as distinct, we can just go to them, crack it open, we can go into the contents, and there's a whole bunch of groups in here, and I want to use the same method that I did on the other things, so I'm going to add a group to this, and grab all the other groups, stick them inside that group, and then of that group, I'm going to open up its transform, and then we are going to find the time when beat is coming on. Good. We'll start here. Start by messing with the position. Go ahead 20 frames. Set a keyframe for that. At the start, we're going to need this to be below its mask, so draw a mask on it. Great. And now we just move this down. Out of frame here. Again, easy ease, graph editor, grab handles, move handles, and perfect. Okay, so you repeat that same process with the other stuff. I'm going to fast forward through that. Okay, so the big difference about premium, this word, is how we're going to organize the keyframes. So in this way, we're going to take them. We're going to move ahead a bunch, and we're going to create sort of an S shape out of the keyframes, all right? So we are going to try to stagger them such that they have kind of an exponential curve to them. So it's going to be a difference of 4 between the first two, difference of 3 between the next ones, difference of 2 between the next ones, and then difference of 1 between the ones after that. And then it goes back up like so. So it comes up, and that's good. Now, if you want to, you can take these things and then you can shorten them by just holding down Alt and then shortening this whole process by selecting keyframes, holding down Alt, going like this, and whoosh, just like that. And it's all good. So we have now animated this logo. I'm going to select everything. I'm going to make its fill color a nice uniform white color for everything. Wonderful. Now we're going to stick it into our scene. All right, so we can just take this, bring it down here, and start it off right there. So it starts coming on as soon as there is space for it. In fact, you can increase this a little bit. It can start coming on and be revealed, and that's wonderful. So we've got a beginning, we've got an end, we now need the middle. It's going to be filled with that text reveal. It's going to be filled with moving things around and a weird triangle thing. So the letters. What we did was we created some text, and that text said something very simple. I believe it was sliding intro, something like that. Okay, good. And let me just get the font we used back here. Was sliding intro, Adele. A wonderful font. I recommend everybody give it a shot. It is a slab serif font. I don't know if that means anything to you, but anyway, it looks nice. So that's the text we went with. Okay, stick that in the middle. We made it a little bit bigger. This is going to get scaled, so don't worry about it too much. And we used 2 copies of them and then just revealed them both with a wonderful alpha matte. And we created it using shape layers, which we're going to do now. And the shape layers were used to cover up the letters. So the first thing you kind of want to do is go in here and look at which is the widest of the letters. I think it's either going to be D or it's going to be the O, and probably the D. I think so. I think the D is probably the widest. So we're going to isolate this layer, and now we are going to draw some rectangles around. So won't that be exciting? So I'm going to grab the rectangle tool here. I'm going to start with the largest piece. I'm just going to draw a rectangle over the whole thing, just like that. And I'm going to change the rectangle to be like a red. It doesn't matter terribly too much what color the rectangle is. It actually has very little significance. So we're going to move it below here just so we can make sure it's covering everything. Now I'm going to go into the rectangle, look into the rectangle path, and we're going to unlink these two. And we want it to just cover this thing. So we're going to use the transform down here to kind of move it left and right, up and down. And we're going to hold down Command or Control to kind of shift this in place very exactly. Wonderful. So we've got a rectangle there. I think that's good. So now we are going to add to this. We're going to add a polystar. And that polystar is not going to be like this. It's going to be 4 sides. It's going to be a polygon. And its position is going to be right here on the edge. It's going to be basically negative 0.5 times whatever this number here is, because that'll put it directly on the edge. And that's what we want. And we want the outer radius to be large enough to encompass the entire thing. All right. So far, this looks pretty unruly, but now we're going to add into this, we're going to add a merge paths. And the merge paths we want is that of the intersect. So we want where both of these things intersect with each other. And what we're going to do is we're going to animate the position of that polystar. So this is where we want it to end. So we're going to move back in time. And then we're going to alter the position down, 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 like that. So it's going to animate up. Okay? So what we're going to then do is we're going to set this as the track mat of the other thing. All right? So we get the track mat here. Set this to alpha mat. So as this animates on, it's going to be defining the area we can see of the text. So now we need to go through, we need to create boxes for everything else. All right. It's a little bit tedious, but you're going to create boxes that are the same size as every other letter. And then you're going to use the exact same size of this thing to get it done. So check this out. I'm going to just go into here. We're going to look into the contents. We've got this rectangle. I'm going to rename it actually rectangle 4, only because it is 1, 2, 3, 4. And it's right there. So I'm going to duplicate that, which will make rectangle 5. And I'm going to move this over to be lined up with the eye here. So here we go. We're going to transform. We're going to move it over. We want its little anchor point to be right in the middle. Perfect. Then I'm going to alter the size of this thing to be way more exact and keep nudging that position. We're going to get it correct right there. Awesome. The other thing we have to alter is the position of this polystar. So make sure you select both of these so that it's going to edit both of both the keyframes here, and we want to move it over so that it's right on the edge. Okay, so we're moving over. We're right there. So then when it's animating up, these are both animating at the exact same time to bring things on. And that's the important part, is that we want all of these to kind of have the same, come on at about the same amount of time, so that there's something common between all of them. Because then when we cascade them together, we want it to seem very normal. So we're working on that premise right here. So that's good. That's that one taken care of. And you're going to continue that process for every letter. I'm going to accelerate that process, and then we'll pick it up once that's done. So now you've got rectangles and paths, and they're all animating and revealing, and that's great. And we are ready to move on. So we're going to take these. We're going to go to the graph editor. We're going to grab these things. We're going to ease them. We're going to pull on the handles like this and like this so that they accelerate fast coming on, and that's wonderful. And now we are going to organize them so that they come on in a delightful S-type pattern. So the first ones want to be a certain number of keyframes apart. So first count all the letters, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 letters, fantastic. So now we divide that by 2, which gives us 6. So we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and that's where this keyframe will go. Great, and then we just count down all the way to 1. So this next one is going to be 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And the next one is going to be 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. Like this. 1, 2. Right here. And then 1. Great. And now we go back up. So 1, 2. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Great. Now, these are all pretty spread out, and what I want to do is I want to select them, and then deselect these, go here, go forward 20 keyframes, hold Alt, pull them like this. Great. I think that's going to work out just super. And there we go. So this is all going to be coming on a little bit faster now. Just like that. Perfect. So we're going to take this, and we're going to put it above this. Then we're going to go track matte, alpha matte, wonderful. What does that look like? It looks like this. So I think that is a lot of fun. Now I'm going to take these and duplicate them. So that'll create a matching set. I'm going to take the bottom one and I'm going to make it the same color as our delightful pink things here. So take this eyedropper there, great. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that it comes on first, so that we have this little box coming out like that. So it's got a little edge to it. If you offset it by more frames, that starts to get wider, and that's wonderful. Something else you have to deal with is this anti-aliasing tear right here. And that is because these two are exactly the same size, and you just need to give a little stroke to the outside of this to cover that up, and then you can't see it at all when you render, and that's wonderful. So just like that, we've got our words coming on. So we're going to come into this thing, and then we're going to grab these layers, and we're going to move them so that they're starting to come on, while this is resolving. This resolves, and then we're watching something else. So that's wonderful, and it's going to keep going. And what we really need to do is to have things cover them up. So they need to go below the things that are going to come in and cover them up. So that's great. Sliding text, intro, words accomplished. Great. The other thing that we put in there was a duplicate of this logo thing. All right, so I'm going to duplicate it. I'm going to go down to this level. And we're going to shrink it. So we're just going to grab the scale, make it tiny, 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 way down like so. And we put it down below this thing like this. That's great. And the other thing we did was we created a new null object so that we can anchor all of these things together. So this thing and these things, they all belong to this null object. So if we want to scale, move, rotate, whatever, whenever we would do those things, we would do it to this null object, and we would do it on these hits. So that's it's coming up, it's going down, it's doing lots of things. So that's when we marked this off. We put that in. The last thing to talk about, I suppose, is that strange sliding kind of a geometry that happened at the beginning, the thing that happens before revealing this. So I'm going to look in here, and we're going to have a look at this wonderful sort of a weird geometric thing, and we're going to analyze how was it made. It seems like it's two triangles, but that could not be further from the truth. It's in fact a polygon and a rectangle again. All right. So let me just solo one of these, and you'll be able to see how it's made by looking here. The whole thing comes on by scaling and rotating. So that's the first thing. The second thing that happens while it's in the middle of rotating and scaling is that we have, within the contents, we have a polystar and a rectangle, and the rectangle is merged to subtract from the polystar, and it just gets bigger. So it just whoop, comes in, gets bigger. So the outer radius of the polystar is growing, and also the outside of this box is growing. So it gets bigger, and that's it. And then the rest of it is all down to its scale, and then its position, and it's moving all over the place. That's it. The others are simply duplicates and alterations on that same formula, that we've got the outer radius changing, and these outer radii are simply less big than the other one. So these are just slightly smaller, more is taken away from them, and that's that. And then you just stagger them in time. So then when you layer them on top of each other, they look a little bit interesting. Kind of like Navajo rug patterns, maybe. Anyway, that's about it. That's all the things you need to do to make an intro like this for yourself. So this has been Evan Abrams for PremiumBeat.com, an excellent place to get royalty-free music. You pay once, you have the track and use it forever. They're professionally made, excellently curated. It's a beautiful archive. I think you'll love it. If you liked the song that you heard in this thing, you should check that out. If you want to see more of Evan Abrams' tutorials and hear more of my horrible grating voice talking at you, then you can check out Evan Abrams, EC Abrams on the YouTube. You should subscribe to Premium Beat in all of its forms. If you're watching this on YouTube or Vimeo or wherever, check that out. Premium Beat is on Twitter. I'm on Twitter at EC Abrams. Everybody's everywhere. So check out all the links that are around. You'll get where you're going. Anyway, thank you so much for watching this. Watch more tutorials and make more interesting things in After Effects. Thank you so much for watching, and have a nice day.